Okay, Jeff, so you've been doing this, I think, what did you tell me, like 16 years?
Yeah, about that.
And you've learned how to do this.
Hmm.
Uh, for, for me, my secret doing home inspections is have the buyer there with you. Did one yesterday, and I mentioned already that I killed that deal. They were both lawyers. Neither of them actually were practicing lawyers. They were buying a property that was in a pretty dicey part of town. And structurally, it was a mess. And I was glad that I was able to give them that information up front rather than have them show up at the end and say, okay, I did the whole inspection, now you're going to pay me for a whole inspection. But I really could have told you within the first 10 minutes that you don't want to buy this house. So that's the kind of thing that I've learned. What have you learned?
Yeah, property management's one of those things where I like to say the harder I work, the less I have to do. It really plays into this business because there's always a maintenance issue that's about to come in. There's always somebody that has a question. There's always a new vacancy that's coming up, and the faster I get right on it, the less problems build up as a result of that thing. I can just keep things resolved and keep things moving quickly.
Let me interrupt you there. I can see how that could be the case. Back when I was 20-something and renting, I was in a hole. It was a triplex they'd made out of an old 1940s home. And there was one thermostat, and it wasn't in my unit. And I was upstairs, and the windows were all closed, and it was an oven. Mm-hmm. And so I was calling about that and getting ignored. That was frustrating. So then I started calling about every other day, trying to get somebody to pay attention to me. And then I was just annoyed. Now I started seeing everything else that wasn't being done. The brick that was falling out, the stove that wasn't working, and I became a major pain in their butt, thinking that would result in me being heard. And so 20 phone calls later, somebody comes out and pushes the brick back in. So I tried to make their life as miserable as mine was. And what I'm gathering is that if you just take the first phone call and do what needs to be done, then maybe you don't get 19 other phone calls.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And just as you said, once there's one problem that starts gnawing on a tenant or a client, the property owner, they start seeing other problems, and they start getting more annoyed at other things. Mm-hmm. But if you just take care of things, then instead their whole experience changes. All of a sudden they go, that was great. This is a great property management company. I called or I submitted my maintenance request, and somebody came out and took care of it, and they start getting less concerned about some of the smaller, maybe less they get less picky about some things that sometimes are just how it is.
Yeah.
So taking that into account, I've even taken things to a further step of trying to think of all the different scenarios that could come up as a property manager and putting together a plan for each one. Because as a property manager, it's important, one, to go move quickly, as we've talked about on a situation, also to be consistent. You can't treat one person one way and another person another way. You're going to find yourself in all kinds of problems, whether it's fair housing violations or even just somebody being mad. You need to be consistent, and you need to move with speed and accuracy. And so, as a property manager, you should be able to sit down and you can think of probably a half a dozen or more things that you just know you're going to be faced with. What do I do as soon as a tenant hasn't paid their rent on time? Day one, what do I do? And you should have a plan step by step. And you can move through that process, and you don't have to worry and wonder and base your decisions on what that tenant's doing or not doing. You just move through the process until the situation's resolved.
Yeah, I am thinking now of a property I did in a university town. where there was 6 guys that were living there, and they told me, yeah, this thing hasn't been addressed. I think it was a bathroom, so they all had to use the one remaining bathroom, and they said we've put in requests and nothing, and now we're not paying our rent, and it's been 6 weeks and we still haven't heard anything. And this affects the guy who you're trying to serve.
Right.
That's not the kind of property management company somebody's looking for.
Right. Yeah. Eventually, if the problems get too big, they move beyond the property manager and start affecting your client.
Yeah,
And all that can be resolved by just a quick response.
yeah,
And you should have a system in place to handle that. Tenants should be able to go online, submit their maintenance request. It goes, you see it immediately. And in today's world, there's no reason, that can't just come on your phone. You go, oh, so and so has a drippy sink. Sign it to the plumber. Boom.
put the Tetris or the Facebook or the Words with Friends down for a minute.
Right.
Make
right.
a phone call to the plumber.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's technology, if you're willing to invest in it, can make this job really, really easy for the tenant, for yourself, and for your client. And it just brings it all together. And again, the harder you work, the less work you have to do.
It is not uncommon for a realtor to run into somebody who says, hey, I want to be an investor. And when that moment happens, I think you mentioned the key thing is, we've talked in other training courses how a realtor needs to be a realtor. He needs to not be a lawyer. He needs to not be a plumber. He needs to not be a home inspector. He needs to be a realtor.
Right.
And I think we're going to add, he needs to not be a pseudo kind of sort of property manager as well. If somebody comes and says, I want to have a rental, that person, maybe he's learned from you, but I think his best response would be, yeah, I learned the following from Jeff, but hey, talk to Jeff. And
Right.
he can give you the straight scoop.
Yeah. And if, whether it's myself or another management company, if they're an ethical management company, they're not going to be stealing your sales. Obviously,
Right.
I'm licensed to do sales, but like I said before, I just don't do sales.
Right.
And so, I benefit more from building a good relationship with a real estate agent. If they come to me for advice and bring their clients to me for advice, I certainly want to reciprocate that and respect that that's their client.
A realtor that has investors, if you wanted to be unethical, you'd take that buyer. If you wanted to be ethical and be a good businessman, you would take care of the realtor and his buyer and then just keep getting more and more and more buyers.
Right.
Plan B works better, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any final parting words of wisdom?
I think we covered it all. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Behind a purple wall, no less. Okay, thank you.